And so once again, good evening, everyone, and thank you for those who are here with us at this time for joining our financial session. So today we're having our PTA Financial Compliance Development Session. This session will walk you through the what, why, and how of PTA financial compliance. For many of us who have our PTA units, know how important finance is as well as the development of our children to our school community. So at this time, we're just waiting a few minutes again, just to allow other persons to come in, as well as our presenter at this time. He will be coming in shortly to give us his wealth of knowledge as it relates to all the needs and knows in financial planning.
Pleasant good evening. Ava, thank you so much. Let me just say a few words before
Sure, no problem, Mr. Russell.
The speaker is, as indicated by Ava, he has a wealth of knowledge. But more so, as treasurers and trustees and persons responsible, it's our duty to ensure financial stability within our units. And by stability, there must be a financial plan, a strategy that involves how we collect funding, how we utilize funding, and how we record, store, or keep funding. So accountability and transparency are things that you will hear quite a bit of. So I'm pleased with the turnout. I'm pleased with the support that you, our presidents, and all the participants are showing right now. And I am hoping that you ask the relevant questions, give the lecturer, the person conducting or teaching, passing his knowledge and experience, give him something to think about. Don't hold back. We can only get better if we ensure that what the knowledge that we need to have, that we get it from the correct source. So again, I am here, I'm listening. I will also ask questions as necessary. So as soon as he comes online, we kick off. And I hope that you all have a wonderful financial webinar. Thank you. Ava?
Thank you again, Mr. Russell, for that very inspiring motivation to let all our units, presidents, treasurers, start developing whatever questions you have in mind that you want to get answered. Anything that you think that no question is a silly question. Everything you would have an answer and receive an answer for. That will help to develop and have you equipped where your unit is concerned. So we're just holding on a few minutes for Mr. Aliendre because he's not in as yet. So I'm just going to check on him and see if all is well. So just give me a few minutes and I'll be right back. Well, I'm here with you. Good evening once again. So at this time, I have the pleasure of introducing our presenter for this evening's PTA Financial Compliance and Development session. So tonight, we're going to have Mr. Brian Aliendre. Brian possesses an ACCA qualification with over 20 years of accounting experience in both the public and private sector. Currently pursuing the final level of the ACCA program, he possesses a wealth of experience in both payroll and accounting software and applications, such as Peachtree, QuickBooks, MicroPay, PayMe, and many others. He is currently active with the Adventist Youth Society of the SDA as a youth leader. And at this time, I would like to bring on Mr. Brian Aliendre to give us his knowledge, to edify us, and to bring us more compliant with what we need to know to help manage our PTAs. Thank you, Mr. Aliendre. Please, you can come on now.
Good evening, everyone. My apologies for my few minutes late. All right, I had some internet connections. All right, so thank you very much for the introduction. My name is Brian Aliendre. I'm here just to give you basic understanding in terms of finance and the role under the PTA organization. As a non-profit organization itself, there are certain rules and responsibilities or understanding of it. So I'm going to present, but I also wanted to be a little active as well. I don't expect the presentation to be long and boring and you all just listen. So I'm asking just a quick question before I start. How many of you all have any accounting experience, any finance experience, any payroll experience? Anyone? Yes, okay.
Good afternoon. Yes, I do.
That's great, fantastic. Anyone else? All right, I see David. Fantastic. So this session should be a breeze because there's information some of you all might know. For the others who don't have that knowledge and experience, all right, is nothing difficult. We do finance every day of our lives. All right, great. All right, let's see Miss Paul, the treasurer. Okay, fantastic. The treasurer is here. So treasurer could correct me if I'm going to the wrong track. All right, so finances in our everyday life. We spend money, we get our salaries, we budget, that's part of finance. We spend based on expenses, income and expenditure, that's part of finance. All right, we save as investments, that's part of finance. Finances in our everyday lives. All right, so we shouldn't be worried about those things at all because it's a basic understanding we're supposed to have. So what I'm going to share here today is just so you get an understanding how it rules in part of an organization, like a non-profit organization of the Port of Spain Regional PTA. All right, so just to get a few basic understanding and just to give it out throughout the session. Now, if you have any questions, just let me know. Feel free. You're not in a serious classroom to say. It's something for you to learn and understand, and I'm open for any suggestions. All right, so let me start by sharing my screen. All right. All right. Okay, let me share the full screen. Document. All right, so you want to see any presentation?
Yes, we are.
Okay, great. All right. All right. So I'm starting very simple. So we have the whole compliance. Our objective basically here is the understanding of the roles and functions of each position in finance. Understand the essence of finance in a non-profitable organization, the basic understanding of financial statements, and finance policies and procedures, right? So understand the roles and functions of each position. I know there are different roles. You have the president, the vice president, the secretary, the treasurer, and other members. So before we go into the roles and functions of each member, we will kind of have an understanding based on what finance is all about under a non-profitable organization. Now, in terms of non-profit, we have, for example, bookkeeping versus accounting. All right, bookkeeping is same accounting, but there are different aspects of it. Bookkeeping covers the organization's day-to-day financial needs. All right, focuses on the data and the record keeping, and doesn't require specific education or certification. So it's a very simple process. It's just like recording all your transactions you do. You do normally do it at home for your own personal budget. You write down all the expenses. I have my light bill, telephone bill, I have internet, how much money I spend on gas for the vehicle, how much I spend on groceries. You set a particular budget, you write down all the expenses. Similar process is the same. You're just recording all the relevant transactions you are doing for the organization. For example, you purchase particular supplies for the meetings, you have particular events you generate revenue from, things for stationery supplies, for record keeping and stuff like that. Accounting, on the other hand, is a little more complex. It comprises more complex financial activities. It focuses on data analysis and reporting, all right? So you find persons with qualifications and who has a degree or CPA or ACCA-qualified, they had to go more in depth in terms of presenting these particular reports. Now, just to break down, it covers the nonprofits of day-to-day bookkeeping, covers the nonprofits day-to-day financial needs, mostly concerning recording keeping. The PTA's bookkeeper, well, in this case, will be the treasurer, should be responsible for tasks like basic data entry, writing checks, making deposits, managing the invoices. Well, in some cases, if you have payroll to pay, stipends maybe, processing payroll. While bookkeepers need some on-the-job training to perform well in their duties and their roles, they are required to have any specialized education or certification. So as I said, anybody could do bookkeeping. There's a particular format. You just trap all your expenses, you trap all your income. So in the cases of the treasurer's role, which I'm glad the treasurer is here today and has the accounting experience. So this is like speaking to the choir. This person knows exactly what to do. But your role is to record every particular transaction. What you spend, keep those records, all right? All copies of the invoices, receipts. So anytime for later on when your organization expands and requires any legal documentation when it comes for audits, you have all the relevant documentations, all right? And form of transparency as well. As I mentioned in terms for the accounting, it involves a wide variety of more complex financial tasks related to analysis and reporting. Accountants will come in behind your bookkeeper to review transactions, perform bank reconciliations, comply essential financial documents to help non-profit make informed decisions. So the accountant need at least a bachelor's degree in accounting or a related field or CPA certification to do their jobs. So in terms of the actual industry itself, where persons are doing it for a job to make a living, to get a salary, they have to have the qualifications. However, for non-profitable organization, there are courses you can develop yourself in to acquire the skills to improve your function as a treasurer. So treasurer, I hope you're listening. I really hope you have all your qualifications. It makes your job easier and a better understanding for the organization itself. Now, with this now understanding the functions, you have to understand the chart of accounts. Now, the chart of accounts is essentially a directory of its finances and the backbone of all accounting procedures in the organization. It organizes all your financial accounts and ledgers into a table-style list for easy review. So, for example, we might spend funds on stationery supplies, paper for reports, etc. You'll give that a particular code, a particular name. For example, you'll call that stationery and paper. So we could do an analysis for the next few months. How much money we spent on paper alone. The accountant needs that information. So in the month of January, February, March, April, respectively, you spend $500, $300, $600, and $1,000. All right, we spend up about close to 21, let's say $2,600 on supplies for paper and stationery. So with that information, that's why it's very vital, especially for the treasurer, to keep all the relevant documentation to make sure transparency and accuracy in terms of calculating all the figures together. And it also involves other expenses. For example, in terms of, in some companies, they spend money on fuel, stipend, training. You know, the accountant will need to have an understanding what is spent, so we have an understanding how everything is spent throughout the organization. Now, most nonprofits divide their chart of accounts into 5 categories. For example, we have assets. All right, so we kind of give a definition to persons who will have knowledge of accounts and finance. It's straightforward. Others will be lesser recap information. Everything your organization owns, such as cash, property, accounts receivables, etc. So if you have inventory items, you have you purchase a vehicle for the company, anything that the company or the non-profitable organization owns. Now, liabilities is everything your organization owes, such as debt, deferred revenue, and accounts payable. For example, you might start doing business with suppliers purchasing particular items and you'll be given a line of credit. So they will fall under that forms of liabilities. Now, your net assets is what your nonprofit is worth, calculated by subtracting the total liabilities from the total assets. So a lot of people will figure like millionaires out. They want to know what's their net value or what's their true value of their company. They just tally up all the assets and minus all the total assets, liabilities from assets, and you get your actual net assets. Now, revenue is straightforward. Any revenue coming in from you have a sale, you have your members paying dues, anything generated based on that, donations from companies or well-wishers, all that forms part of revenue. And of course, the most easiest, expenses. All the funding your organization spends on its mission related to activities administrative needs, and the upfront costs of fundraising campaigns. So we have our events, we might have.
So listen, right. Is there anything else that is doing that can be put in the chat?
Hi, please. Can someone mute your mics, please? Alienne? Thank you. Now, so many financial documents, especially the treasurer, must be familiar with are as follows. Of course, we mentioned the chart of accounts, a comprehensive list of all the financial account ledgers used by the organizations. So in this case, for a simple organization like the PTA, you will have things like the cash book, general ledger, bookkeeping software, ledgers to record all the relevant transactions. You must have those records in particular order, all right? Now, donation records, in cases where you have well-wishers donating towards the cause and development of PTA, all right, which includes cash and in-kind donations, is essential. We're trying to keep the records as transparent as possible to make sure that there's a accuracy and reliance on information, especially if the accountant, in this case, the treasurer, has to produce particular reports to generate how much income was generated for each month. If we need to get more donations or we have increased subscriptions or dues from the relevant members, all that could be decided on. Bank reconciliations, regular reconciliation of bank statements with internal records is vital for accuracy and fraud prevention. Now, all organizations has to get a bank account. So any transactions going in and out must be recorded through the bank reconciliation as well. You have the cash book, of course, all right? However, the bank reconciliations will ensure that all that accuracy will be understood and it cannot prevent any fraud. What is normally done for bank reconciliation, if I go a little in details, it should be a few days after the end of each month. Some organizations do it weekly, depending on the amount of transaction they have to do. So we have a record to show that, okay, all the funds we have received, it has been deposited. We recognize all the relevant bank charges. We recognize all the additional income to be coming in. So accuracy and transparency is vital. Budgets. Budgets. Sorry, question? I have a question. Okay. All right, I will continue. Budget is necessary for planning, especially the accountant. In this case, I will say the treasurer. All right. The treasurer will have to sometimes organize budgets.
No. Okay. Let's see. Huh? Say it again?
Can you mute your mic, Ms. Ash? Thank you.
Apologies.
No problem. All right, so budget is quite essential. Just like for your personal budgeting, you get your monthly salary, weekly salary, bi-monthly, fortnightly. You had to spend on all your necessary needs. So you set a budget. How much I'm spending based on food, how much I'm spending based on the vehicle maintenance, how much I'm spending on everything else that is needed for your personal use. The same principle applies for any profitable or non-profitable organization. Budgets have to be set based on if we are spending too much on stationary supplies or you have not generated enough revenue to be able to support the objective of the PTA. All right. Financial policies and procedures was also required. These guidelines ensure consistent and transparent financial management. So it's like guides. For example, this organization I expect to go for the next 100 years. So we have to set policies and procedures in place that the next person could just follow accordingly. For example, how we do our bank reconciliations, how do we do our transactions, receiving funds, how it is recorded. Those policies and procedures must be developed to be guided through. So it's like having a manual to do something. So you have a manual to run a computer software, you have a manual to drive a vehicle or to repair a vehicle. It's the same principle. It's having a manual how you proceed of running your financial business of the organization itself. Sometimes these policies change based on environmental factors like government legislations or environmental issues, like we had to change your procedures or processes and stuff like that. Now, journal entries, these record all the financial transactions in the general ledger. So simple as cash transactions. All right, somebody gave a donation, you had to record it in the general ledger. In cases you have the cash book for any other transactions, you purchase particular products or items for the organization, we have to record it through journal entries. Normally, softwares, I'm not sure if in the future you'll be using any particular accounting software to make your job much more paperless and more easy to manage. That we'll discuss later on. Receipts and payments account, a summary of all cash transactions. Every particular cash transactions you could think of. You spend items, you purchase lunch for a meeting, or receive donations, all these must be recorded. Receipts and payments. Now, understanding the essence of finance in a non-profit organization. The best practices, in other words, the reason for financing this is accuracy and timeliness. You have to ensure that all financial records are accurate and are up to date. So, for example, if you are not recording all your transactions in a timely manner, for example, we receive, let's say, $10,000 in revenue in dues and donations for the month of April, but we have not recorded that information in a timely manner. We still have some transactions we had to enter. It will not give a true and fair understanding of your financial records. So you'll be budgeting based on a revenue of $5,000, which we're supposed to be budgeting based on a revenue of $10,000. So this will affect decision-making from management level, where the president will enter the financial records with the treasurer produce, right? And certain decisions will not be effective in that sense. Segregation of duties. Different individuals should be responsible for handling cash, recording transactions, and reconciling accounts to minimize the risk. So let me give an example. If you have the treasurer doing everything, she's signing the checks, she's receiving the cash, she's making the payments, you're giving her all that authority and power, all right? It could lead to a risk of fraudulent behavior, in terms of errors happening and is not being corrected and found. And this could mislead the financial records or information for decision making. So that's why the treasurer sometimes delegates particular members, okay, you are responsible for receiving all the cash, giving a report, you sign on the documentation saying this was received for the period, the treasurer will have it to verify. So segregational duty kind of shares the responsibility, and it helps in terms of reducing errors. As you know, humans, we are prone to errors. We all make mistakes. Sometimes I make it. You put a 6 for a 9 or 9 for a 6, and the figures will be inaccurate. Sometimes having a second person to review it. So in this case, we have one of the members reviewing the information while the treasurer do the final check. So transparency will be much easier, accuracy will be improved, and everybody knows exactly what business they have doing based on the organization itself. Another aspect of importance is authority. So the treasurer may be authorized to approve a transaction. So they had a meeting and they decided, okay, we're going to purchase brand new jerseys for all the members of the PTA. All right. So anywhere is recorded in the minutes. The treasurer will get that information saying that we got approval to purchase X, Y, and Z. She will get the information, get the invoice, purchase everything, submit, and record it. So we have a trail on everything. We have the minutes authorizing the transaction. Then we have the physical documentation, which is the invoice stating that this was purchased, what money was spent, and evidence of what we received. Sometimes we get the delivery notes receiving all the relevant items. So in future, it's 5 years past or a few months past, if we're going back to the records, we can identify that transaction, what it was for, and it will be totally transparent. The third aspect in terms of the essence of finance is internal controls. Implement procedures to safeguard the assets and prevent errors and fraud. For example, as mentioned, based on segregation of duties, you set systems in place where authorization is given. It has to be reviewed or checked by the treasurer before it's signed by the relevant signatories. So when the signatories receive this information, they should have all the documents attached. They say, okay, they have the invoice, we have the minutes giving the approval by the president on the meeting stating this was authorized. The treasurer did get the invoice with the correct amount, how much they purchased and what was delivered. So they will sign for that particular payment. So those are different types of internal controls you could do to safeguard. Even limits. For example, if a transaction is over a particular amount, is given authorization to sign, okay, only the president can sign something over $50,000. Anything else the treasurer can sign for less with the relevant authorization. So these are some examples why it's so important having internal controls in your organization, especially when it comes to finance. Regular reporting is very important. Provide regular financial reports to the board of directors and other stakeholders. A lot of just like you have a company, let's say you're owner of a company, you want to know how the business is going. Is it profitable, non-profitable? Are we achieving the objective as a non-profit organization? So this is where a regular report comes in. Financial reports are one of the biggest aspects of all organizations itself. And compliance. Stay informed about and comply with all relevant tax laws and regulations. Now, in some profit organizations, we abide by particular tax laws, government policies. We have to follow accordingly. In non-profitable organization, we don't have much tax related to us. So we would not be paying corporation tax. However, depending on the size of the organization, sooner or later, you had to pay green fund and business levy, all right, as one. Are there any questions so far? Am I going too fast? Anything you do not understand? Can I proceed, or you have any questions before I go forward? All right, so your silence says it all. All right, so.
Good evening, excuse. I would like to ask a question.
Sure.
My name is Malika Henry Magano, the treasurer of St. Catherine's Anglican School.
Yes.
I wanted to find out when you were speaking about having procedures in place for continuity in particular.
Yes.
In terms of record keeping and that type of thing. Is there any sort of guidance you can provide where that is concerned, or are there things that we could get to do this and to put it in place? Because coming into this position, we didn't have anything. There wasn't anything for us to work with, and although I'm in the position, we're still going through the teething process. And I try to keep record, yes, but I don't have like a proper structure in place. And I know, but as you were speaking about it, I think it'll be really useful for continuity purposes. So like if you have things you can keep digitally, and then you could like always have a flash drive or something online, Google Drive, whatever, that people can have access to. And as they say, this organization will be around for 100 years to come, and you don't always have to reinvent the wheel. Is there something that we could use?
Okay. Well, there are some procedures, some, how to say, templates that you could be used depending on what type of internal control or functions. So, for example, every organization is different. So it has to customize based on the needs of the organization. I could give you a structure, but it mightn't fit the organization. So I will need more information from you guys in terms of what you have existing and just develop on it. And you can set certain procedures and follow through. But remember, after a period of time, things change, procedures change, and you may have to modify some of these internal controls and these systems so that you will continue having continuity for the next 100 years. But I'm willing to assist. Once I get more information, one can be provided and it can be set. So going forward, you could continue. If that position has to be replaced, that person will come with all the relevant guidelines and procedures and processes accordingly. So what I found is what procedures or processes you already have in existence. And then I could build from there, go forward. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Any more questions before I proceed? Okay. All right. So for example, now we have to have the basic understanding of financial statements. All right, so my other question?
Sorry, Brian. Yeah, I think Siobhan here. Sorry, good night.
Good night, good night.
I think it's stemmed off of the same question the treasurer would have answered. And I think it touched on some of the things I might have asked, but I wanted to find out, would you also be, and I think it will be in your SOP, standard operation procedures, right? But
Yes.
would you be stressing on or giving examples of if there was an issue with errors being made or some sort of fraud or detection and all these other things, if you would be touching on those things and what is the procedure that you follow, like the general procedure that you follow to have that highlighted to the members within the group?
Okay. All right, that's a very good question. Basically, the presentation was based to give a general understanding of finance based on a non-profit organization. What you touched there is one of the in-depth issues that a lot of organizations face. But it also stems based on what you mentioned, as well as finance policies and procedures. All organizations have a fraud policy that which will establish in terms of an event, if any errors or any fraud is detected, what's the procedures we have to do. Then again, it's not just like just presenting a solution. It has to be, how to say, customized based on the financial needs of the organization and put in place where certain procedures, what has to be done in terms of identifying, has to be audited by the treasurer to find the relevant evidence, documented and stuff, and whatever actions or how to say disciplinary hearing and all those things. So this involves a lot of aspects, not just finance. But if it was our other organization, this will involve industrial relations as well as human resource management in terms of dealing with these particular issues. But in terms of finance, we can set a finance or fraud policy within the organization. So when this comes around, we can establish it. But I can't go into details of it. Again, goes back to the original request. I need to get more information about the organization so certain procedures and policies could be set. This could be one of the vital rules since the PTA will be dealing with a lot in terms of finance. Because if your system, I'm not sure how you generate revenue, if it's through fundraisers, through donations, through subventions, or through dues where persons pay contributions or subscriptions, it all depends. And once these systems are set in place, internal controls and finance policies relating to fraud can be established. So I'm willing to assist based on that. I just need more information and your direction itself.
Hi, thanks.
No problem. All right. So the basic understanding of financial statements. We have different types. Statements of financial position, which we will know as the balance sheet. The statement of function expenses, which is the income statement, and the statement of cash flow. Gives you all the general cash flow coming in and out of the organization based on operation, investing, and finance. Now, how we read the financial statements. A lot of people might see in the papers every year, some company publishing their audited financials, and you see so many figures and numbers, and it gets so confusing. Sometimes I don't understand this. But basically, for a non-profit organization, especially for the PTA, will be very easy, very straightforward. So let's start with the balance sheet. How do we read the balance sheet? All right, a balance sheet conveys the book value of the company. It allows you to see the resources it has available and how we will finance at a specific date. It shows its assets, liabilities, and owner's equity, essential what it owes or owns. and the amount invested by shareholders. Now, the balance sheet is also information that can be leveraged to compute rates of returns and evaluate capital structure using accounting equations like assets equals to liabilities. That's more details from accounting aspects. But the balance sheet really shows your assets, your liabilities. If you purchase furniture or PTA, you purchase particular items, how much you have in cash, you give you a snapshot how the organization look at present. What is at this date? Today is the 27th of June 2025. Give you a snapshot how much money we have at hand, how much in terms of our inventory items, are we owing any debts, suppliers, give you a balance. So the board members could identify, or the committee could see exactly where we at in terms of our financial standing. Now, the income statement is almost the same thing. In this case, the income statement is all your expenses, all your income. Simple. It's also known as the profit and loss account or statement. It summarizes the cumulative impact of revenue, gain, expenses, loss transaction is given for a period. The document is often shared as part of a quarterly, annual report, sometimes monthly, and shows the financial trends of business, activities, revenue, and expenses. The comparisons over a set period of time. So let's say for the end of the month of June, you have all your relevant transactions. You spend money on gas, you spend money on inventory items, stationery supplies, office supplies, you pay stipends, how much it generated in terms of revenue, in terms of donations, subventions, capital grants, whatever it may be. So you have a fair understanding of exactly our income coming in, our expenses going out. Are we making a loss or generating a profit or not? In some cases, we are a non-profitable organization. Our objective is for whatever the mandate or strategic objective of the organization, it will be mainly to focus on that. Now, the income statement is typically includes the following information. All right, revenue, which is understand the amount of money the business takes in, and the expenses, the amount of money business spends, or in other words, goes out. If you are a profit organization, you are manufacturing, you're making stuff, you have cost of goods sold, you have all the inventory items, opening stock, closing stock, goods in transit, everything is added there. Here, you will determine what is your gross profit, which is your total revenue, less all your costs of sales. All right, then you have your operating income, which is your gross profit less your operating expenses. Your operating expenses will use your other transactions, what your administrative costs for advertising, marketing, whatever it may be, salaries, all that reduce that, and you'll get your net income before taxes. Sometimes, in this case, you enter depreciation. Now, appreciation is like a non-monetary value, but to be fair for your financial records, especially for the income statement, depreciation is the intent to which the asset, for example, is aging after a period of time. So, for example, you purchase a vehicle costs $100,000, all right? But every time you use that, there's a cost for using it. So let's say you have a depreciation at 20% straight line. So 20% of that is $20,000 less for this year. So the value, 100,000 minus 20,000 will give you 80,000 to give you a true value of its assets. And when the 5 years pass, you realize that the vehicle has no value. Sometimes you could sell it and purchase a new vehicle. That's just an example for future reference. But your main, based on your non-profitable organization, is your expenses, all your operating expenses you spend on operating and your revenue generated. I won't go into details to the different aspects of the financial may apply to a non-profit organization. But in future, as you expand, I'm confident that you expand and you last for another 100 years. And you can set things in motion in terms of better understanding these financial statements. Now, we mentioned before in terms of finance policies. So, for example, you mentioned in terms of SOPs, standard operating procedures. You mentioned the fraud policies. This is extremely vital or crucial for operating all organizations, not just a non-profitable organization, all. Financial policies are crucial for organizations because they provide a framework for managing resources, ensuring financial stability and promoting accountability. These policies guide decision-making, minimizing risks, and help organizations achieve their strategic goals by establishing clear guidelines for financial activities and transactions. So as you mentioned before, in terms of the fraud policies, Mr. Shavon, those things have to be established. Normally they are discussed, the treasurer can make recommendations or get some, how to say, template finance policy based on fraud policies, modify it for the needs for the organization and put it in force. So any problems to mitigate risks of fraud or person stealing or, make things transparent and accountable, we can set procedures based on that. So it will apply based on policy and also in terms of procedures to help with the internal controls of the organization. All right, any questions so far?
Yes.
Yes. Ms. Black?
No.
Okay. All right. Now, here are some breakdowns, the importance and why it is so important to have financial information. I touched on a few, but just to give the clear guidelines, consistency and transparency. Financial policies ensure the financial activities are conducted consistently and transparently, reducing the risk of errors, fraud, and misinterpretation. All right, so we mentioned that before. We'll give an example of the fraud policies, setting procedures based on that. These must be set. Risk management. Policies help identify, assess, and mitigate financial risks, protecting the organization from potential losses and ensuring long-term stability. So setting policies in terms to generate revenue. For example, all members of the PTA must submit do a dues or subscription every month. This will help the revenue generation of the organization and stability. All right. Accountability and oversight. They define rules, responsibilities, and decision-making authority, promoting accountability and preventing unauthorized actions. So everybody positioned, the VP, the president, the treasurer, the signatories, all have their roles and functions identified. So for example, the president can sign checks. All right. The treasurer cannot authorize a particular amount. The VP can't do this one thing and say, I want to purchase these items. So once these are set in stone in terms of what is your responsibilities, so I assume that everyone has their roles and responsibilities for the different positions, it will make it much easier to identify all the relevant policies and who is responsible, accountable for what. Strategic planning. Financial policies support strategic planning by providing a framework for resource allocation, investment decisions, and financial stability. So if we know we're getting a particular income, we can set a policy. If we have a certain amount of funds in our regular bank account, any excess should put in our investment account. This will show stability and in terms of resource management, so it'll help for financial stability later on. So you can set a saving policy that a particular month, that once we receive subscriptions of 1,000 every month, a certain percentage could be sent to a savings account or investment account to help the financial sustainability of the organization. Compliance and governance. This is one of the most important reasons for having finance policies and procedures. They help organizations comply with relevant laws, regulations, and industry best practices, enhancing their credibility and reputation. Remember, a lot of non-profit organizations are looked at very cautiously. Someone may come with a charity. Someone come with charity, developers just want to be comfortable submitting funds to them on a regular basis. But when they realize certain things are not there, they don't have policies in place, no regulations, no regular reporting, people are skeptical. I say, well, I'm not giving no donation to this organization. and the records all over the place. They don't have no standards. You know, people look at all these things. All right, efficiency and effectiveness. By streamlining financial processes and promoting best practices, policies improve efficiency and effectiveness in financial management. I'm going back to the same point with the fraud policy. A lot of companies, based especially non-profitable organizations, don't really have a fraud policies because they trust all their members. Who do nothing, they trust this man, he there for years as the treasurer, so I don't need to set any policy based on that. He's a good one. But anything could happen. Fraud doesn't have to be that you're a criminal. You could be the most innocent person. And some situation may influence or tempt you to put your hand in the cookie jar. So we set particular policies enable to protect the organization to be more effective, to improve the financial management of the organization itself.
Aliendre.
Yes, sir. Good evening,
Can I say something?
Sure.
I would have been privy to something, and it was shocking in the moment, where someone was the treasurer of a sports club, and they were the best person you could think about in terms of ethics and morality. However, in the moment, they had an emergency situation where they dipped into the club's funding and took out about $3,000 for their own personal purposes. Now, Murphy's Law is a funny thing, because would you believe I only found out about that when they asked me for support to put back the funds. And I asked, well, what's going on? So it so happened that they took the funds out. Normally, nobody would ask about it. The week after,
I don't know, Daddy.
All right, so you there, Steph? Okay, and that is true. So that's why it's so important having these financial policies. It's not just to blame the person or to identify that, but it's ready to mitigate a risk that's happening. I always believe prevention is better than cure. So
you heard everything, right?
Yeah, I heard majority. I didn't hear the last part you were saying.
Oh, the last part I said is that the week after, the club wanted to access the funds. So they were in a bind. Normally, the club wouldn't ask them for any funds. But it so happened that right after they took the funds to do their own thing, they were going to repay it when the month ended. But the club asked for the funds 2 days before their funding came in. And they had no choice but to call around, which, of course, to ask for help to put back the funds from trusted people. I'm saying it to say the same thing you're saying. Policies can only prevent, but the person in the position is the person that has to follow through the policy. Even if nobody's looking, you still have to do the right thing.
Understood.
Thank you.
Totally. So that's why it's so important having these policies in place. And I realize fraud is one of the new things, especially for non-profitable organizations. So it's setting things in place. So anybody had to take out funds, set something that you need a second signature or you need authorization, or given limitations of persons who have 2 signatories, only checks are given. There are policies now, persons we have set a petty cash system. Like you have a float for $1,000, and that is only used for small items. If you're going to buy a postal stamp or anything like that, and it has to be signed off by some authority, either the treasurer, the VP, or the president. So once you set that in place, it kind of mitigates the risk of having those types of frauds. All right, but as time goes along, how they say white collar crime has come in more advanced now, especially with AI and technology. Policies may have to adapt to the relevant environmental changes. So I always consider those policies are very vital. Another reason for it is long-term financial health. Well-defined financial policies contribute to the long-term financial health and sustainability of the organization by promoting responsible financial management. So the treasurer has to make relevant recommendations, abide by all the policies they have, and follow through. So if you have a policy based on saving a particular amount every month, this will add to the promotion and promoting the responsibility of financial management and the continued health of the organization itself. And also, another important point is investors' confidence. If I, as an outside person, seeing the organization, seeing what they are doing, and your financial records are always up to date, Your policies are strong, your SOPs are in point, and they are continually being revised to ensure that the organization will come. Investors will feel confident. Okay, let me donate $100,000 to your cause. Even in government, in terms of having government assistance, you have to meet particular criteria, having regular financial statements, organized procedures, board members have particular skills and requirements. And once you meet those criteria, funding is much easier to access. And also stakeholders' trust. The PTA, you are representing the parents and the teachers of all the relevant schools you are responsible for. So transparency and accountability fosters financial policies, build trust with stakeholders, including employees, customers, and the public. So in other words, everyone is looking at you. And we are living in a world where information now, it is so, how to say, easy to get. You always hear, hey, I hear the treasurer from the PoS Environs, PTA, take $1,000 and thing. I know how social media and everything spread. You don't want that. Persons even put policies on social media, how we expose certain information, confidentiality clause, all that is to protect the organization and to ensure the trust of all the relevant stakeholders. In this case, will be the parents and the teachers, as well as the students. In essence, financial policies are not just a set of rules, but strategic tools for the organization to achieve their financial objectives, manage risks, ensure long-term success. Some organizations like Government of Finance Office Association even recommend formal adoption of financial policies as a best practice. So as much as you're setting basic rules, you have a treasurer collecting money, putting money in a pan, I strongly suggest set financial procedures that every 3 days, this funds or every day, this funds must be deposited in our accounts. This will protect the treasurer and also protect the organization as well. All right, so that kind of comes to end. I think I went over the time. It was really supposed to be 40 minutes, but if you have any questions, I'm open to any particular questions. And not saying things you're not clear about, the floor is open.
All right. Good night, Siobhan here again. Brian.
Yes.
Yes. So I think well, so many things that you touch on resonate in terms of it's important for the standard operations procedure to be very strong.
Yes.
The other thing is also important for the persons who take the role to ensure for accountability, ownership, and ensure that they inspect what they expect as well. So have measures in place to ensure that these SOPs are not violated or breached in any points, right? But my question for you will be, given your experience in terms of doing the PTAs especially in Trinidad, what are the top 3 instances or things that you see happen regularly that we heading into this realm could look out for and make sure that we cover those instances? Like what are the top things that you see that may be slipped by PTA members not adhering to?
All right, okay. I can list quite a few, but I will list the top 3. One is in terms that I'm not targeting the treasurer, but the treasurer has a lot of power in the sense that, as the example as Mr. Russell brought, where that person has access to the funds, they dip in the funds, and when time they couldn't put it back. Now, if systems were set in place that the treasurer can't just take out funds just like that, it has to have a signatory and stuff like that, you know, that will not happen. It will mitigate that risk. And a lot of non-profitable organizations, even sports clubs, you have even church clubs as well, sorry to say, that they don't have strong systems. So you find that treasurer has authority to take money, spend what they want, and put it back. And that's a no-no. That's one of the rampant or most non-profitable organization. Another is authenticity of particular documentation. For example, some people make fraudulent invoices. It look legit, they purchase particular items and they take it out and say they pay for a utility bill. You understand? Hold on 1 minute. They paid for a utility bill and they make a particular invoice and they submit it to get authorized and they pay and they took so many money. And they have a lot of that kind of activities where they have like suppliers, false suppliers, and they take any money, they get any job somewhere else. Perfect example I saw where a person supposed to purchase parts for a vehicle. The person made a fraudulent invoice, all right, for absorbent amount, and they give it a presenter, get approved. They took the money, they cash the check, and they buy a cheaper product and they keep the money for themselves, the excess for themselves. So all those things have to be identified. So the invoices, when they call the supplier, they make sure they have relevant, authorized, some of them who are, you purchase from everywhere. Purchase persons who have value added tax registration numbers and things like that. And another thing as well, they don't have proper controls in terms of not regular reporting. So every 3 months they get in a financial report. So fraudulent behavior could happen. The accountant or the treasurer could cook the books, you understand, and present a report and they distrust on what their word is. So we had a set system in place of regular reporting. If that information could be audited, where I could get an independent audit in your team, an auditor in your team, just to do a quick check procedures are going accordingly, if you're following the standard operating procedures, you're following the policies and stuff like that, and manage spot checks. Okay, I'm doing a check on the petty cash today. You're supposed to have 1,000, but we realize 800. It sets controls to mitigate that risk. So those are the 3 common ones. Number one is that authority that treasurer in some organization have. But I have confidence in this treasurer, and I have confidence in the organization that they will set things in place and things will be okay based on that.
Aliendre.
Yes, sir.
The first one, the risk of cash or the allure of cash is what increases that propensity for that to happen. So the PTA currently is encouraging all our treasurers to open an account. It is proving challenging on the bank's end because there are so many checks and balances that the units have to go through. Even though the national PTA gives them a letter, they still have a lot of things to go through on the bank's perspective. So that is one challenge there. So the problem in number one is cash. Cash is temptation in itself, and it also presents a risk of a lot of things taking place. Loss of the cash, the destruction of the cash somewhere, paper, something, or theft of the cash, for want of a better word. The second thing is at every PTA general meeting, in terms of accountability, treasurers are required to give a report. And when at the regional level, a report can be given from the region to national about their treasurers and funding and so on. So there are the checks and balances. Enforcement is one, and the accuracy of it. What's the third thing you said?
The third thing is policies, not regular reporting. Right.
Well, then inside of that, there is an act of parliament that governs the PTA, which speaks to the treasurer's report on the composition, where the trustee is supposed to be the check and balance for the treasurer. They're supposed to work hand in hand. So it's there. It just requires units to adhere to it and the region to ensure and enforce it and so on.
Right. So as I said before, I have confidence based on some of the roles and responsibility I'm seeing for the president, the VP, the treasurer, the secretary, the secretaries. It's kind of abides by the rules based on finance. Segregation of duties help mitigate particular risks. All right. I know the challenges for most non-profit organizations is to open an account, a bank account especially for like sports clubs and other PTA groups and stuff like that, because of changes in the FIU. However, once you follow the relevant procedures, it shouldn't be that difficult. You just have to make sure you set your committee, who are the persons who will be responsible in terms of the treasurer, the president, and going forward, record their names, establish your rules and regulations, your bylaws, like any other organization. And once you start that foundation, it forces you to adapt to the rules and be able to control your financial situation. So it will be difficult at times, but the required red tape and procedures has to be done. So it kind of push the PTA as not like a group starting now in a year, it does dissolve. You are establishing a foundation for the organization. And once you follow the relevant rules and regulations, setting your bylaws, setting your regulations, your procedures, your quorum for meetings, etc., and then setting your bank account and everything, it'll be kind of easier to establish. You get your letter, which is good. It's a start. So don't give up hope. At this time, yes, you may have cash in hand. Treasurer, I'm sorry to say you have a large responsibility, but you see how important your role is. But you have the support of your committee members, your president, your VP, secretary, the secretaries, all have their roles also in finance, and they will assist you accordingly. And once you set relevant policies, and as Mr. Chevron said, you have the SOPs set, you will be guided accordingly. Any other questions? All right, so if there are no other questions.
Yes, I would like to ask a question, please.
Sure.
Will this meeting will you give us a copy of this meeting recorded? Because I'm the treasurer of the Participant Environment, and I was in another meeting and listening to you, and my phone died. So now I reach a place where I could get it charged. I've come back online. So
yes, I think I had to talk to the facility. I think they record the session, but
yes, thank you. Yes, Mr. Brian. So yes, the meeting is being recorded.
Yes.
And it would be shared on one of our mediums.
All right.
So you don't have to fear. Okay.
I will also provide.
Okay, Ms. Patrick.
Yeah, I heard you. Thank you.
You're welcome. So, Mr. Brian, you can continue.
All right. So, are there any other questions? All right. So, if there are no other questions, I'd like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to present to you guys. And based on what I'm seeing so far, I'm very confident that you'll be well established and particular finance policies and procedures will be followed. All right. So if there are no more questions, I'd like to thank you for having me.
And before you go, I would like to ask one of our treasurers to give a vote of thanks. So I'll ask for a volunteer.
Hi, good night. Sorry, good night. Mr. Second Vice, I asked you to thank the vote of thanks.
Oh, sorry. That's our president. I didn't know you were on. Great.
I just
Great.
Hi, good night, everyone. Mr. Aliendre, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing your name correctly. On behalf of PoS Environs, we would sincerely like to thank you for your time tonight, for the wealth of knowledge that you have given us. For me, it was a lot of refresher. I've done this before, but it's been a while. And for our treasurers who may have been a little bit lost in their positions and their functions, it's a grounding that that's much needed, the guidance that is much needed. So we sincerely appreciate the information you shared with us this evening, and we look forward to putting it into practice to strengthen the financial base of our PTAs, and therefore further strengthen our PTAs as well. So again, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yes, good evening once again. And I do second what Ms. Lacroix said. We really thank you, Mr. Aliendre, for coming out and giving us that in-depth and detailed basic information. As basic as you look at it, it was very detailed, informative, and I believe everyone have a more wider view of what it is they would need to do. And thank you once again. To all our members at this point in time, just a reminder before we log off to please fill out the attendance register as mentioned in the chat. There is a certificate of participation for persons who were at this particular strategic planning in financial tonight. So I'll give everyone a few minutes to just click on that link quickly to ensure that you all are registered from this evening's session.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ash. Again, to our speaker as well, we very much appreciate you. Members, I would like to remind you as well for our PTA boot camp that is this Saturday at Rosary Boys from 9 to 2 p.m. So I'm looking forward to see all our officers here. A lot of what was shared tonight, we'll be doing some practical on it, as well as all the different roles of the PTA. So I'm looking forward to see everyone. I know we've had a lot of training sessions this week and last week. And next week, we will also have the PRO training. And I look forward to having all our officers engaged. We want to open the new year fully informed and ready for all that PTA has to offer. So thank you very much to everyone, and you all have a blessed night.
Blessed night. Thank you.